Okay, so we're going to talk through this review question, and I gave the kids some time before I started the video to complete it. This y equals right here is just what is left after you cancel stuff. Well, first you got to factor it. So I'm going to call on different people to do different parts of this process. So I'll try to avoid the student who's been gone for yesterday to not put you on the spot too much, but otherwise the dice rule. Here we go. This is Adra, it's you. Can you tell me what the top and the bottom factor to?
The top factors to x minus 7 and x plus 1.
And the bottom?
The bottom factors to x plus 7 and x minus 7.
Yep. And then this cancels. And then why is it so important that you write what's left? Because this one is pretty clean. Some of the other more complicated ones, man, it's so complicated, kids don't know what to graph. But if you write y equals, see if it's not a function, if it doesn't have the y equals, x plus 1 over x plus 7, then you know that's the thing that you'd have to graph. That's the thing that would tell you if it's bigger on bottom, bigger on top, or same on both. That's the thing that you'd use to find the whole. So when I looked back at kids that struggled on the test last year, they didn't have this. That was a common denominator amongst the kids, is that they didn't have that. So please take a second and do that. All right, number 2, the whole. The whole came from this part right here. And so that would be at, well, I'm going to call on somebody here. And it's row 5. Alice, it's you. What did you get for the whole?
7, 4, 7.
And I'm putting the 7 right here. And that's 8/14, so you reduced it to 4/7. I'm with you. Nice job. All right, then horizontals. Row 3. Caitlin, this one's you. Horizontal asymptote.
Y equals 1.
Horizontals are horizontal asymptotes. Good. And tell me how you got that. You're not wrong. I'm just asking you, how did you get 1?
Because the ratio of the coefficients on the numerator and denominator is 1.
1 over 1, and so then that's 1. Very good. Okay, then the row 2, Andrew. What's the vertical asymptote?
I got
X equals -7 is correct. It was the other thing from the domain. Would you just tell me the domain? All reals.
Can't be 7.
Can't be 7. Can't be -7. Good. And these two guys are either wholes or asymptotes, and we figured out that the 7 was the whole because it canceled. The other one is your vertical. All right, cool. Now that should have been easy. Now here's what would be harder. Does anybody know what the graph of this looks like? I don't either. But you know more than you think you know. Say you had to graph this. Don't you know the vertical and horizontals? You just wrote them down. So take a second and next to this put an XY axis and put in the horizontal and vertical asymptotes. We're not just writing them. We have to be able to actually graph them. So horizontal, if I look it up in my list here, was y equals 1. Verticals, x equals -7. Now, the reason we're taking time on this is because this is one of the harder ones to graph because you don't know what it looks like. So, make an XY chart. Because if you are stumped on the test and you're like, I'm not sure what it looks like, you're going to make a few points. And then you're going to realize, since this one has asymptotes, it's actually way easier because once you find a few points, you just have to go closer and closer to the asymptotes from there. So Let me give you a pro tip on exactly what to pick. Given you can pick anything, what should you pick? Look close here. Do you get that I don't know whether it's up in here or if it's down in here? So do you get I got to pick a number that's to the right side of the -7? And I got to pick a number that's to the left side because I don't know if it's in here or in there. So I got to be to the left and to the right of the -7. That's the numbers you should pick. So if I were you, I'd put the -7 on the chart, and then when you actually stick it in, you realize, oh, it actually kills the function. That's the point. It is the vertical asymptote. Then go on either side of the vertical asymptote. So pick -6 and -8. Take a second and figure out what points you'd have. The function we are graphing again is right here. I'll rewrite it where it's easier to see. I think you'd agree that most kids did pretty well on the quiz we just took. You probably got, I don't know, only one wrong or better on that quiz we just took. But this graphing problem is probably harder than all the rest of them. That's what I found in the test. It's the hard graphs, so it got people. So what's the difference? The kids that can put in the asymptotes and make the chart and then know which numbers to pick on the chart. To go on either sides of the vertical asymptote. All right, Steichen, what did you get when you stuck -6 into the function? -5 over,
5.
look at that again.
-5 over 1.
Yeah, which is simplifies to
-5.
-5. Look at that. All right. So take a minute and graph that and then figure out what the kid next to you thinks the other point would be, -8 comma what, and then graph that. And then between the two of you, see if you can figure out what to do. Now that you got a point here and a point there, how do you finish the graph? All right, talk to that kid next to you. I'm going to pause while you do that. So let's see how you did. You should have gotten 7 for this. And again, I know most of you have a 7 here because you stuck -8 in the function and you can do math and then you got -8 comma 7, right? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then if I put in these into my graph, -6, -5, I'm going to make them bright green points. There's a bright green point down there. And then -8, 7 is like a bright green point up there. Now, what you need to understand from here, and finishing off this graph, is how do you do asymptotic behavior? That's where you get closer and closer, but you never touch. Try to see how I'm doing this. I think the easiest way is to show you what the answer is. Do you get, if I can't touch either of those lines, and this is my key point right here, if I can't touch those lines, but I have to get closer and closer to them, it has to go that way and that way. Does that make sense to you? Now exactly where, wouldn't it be nice if I had another point? What if I did have another point? Well, you can just make another point. And what if I make another point and it comes out like right there? And then it'll be even easier to see, like, oh, I see where it's gonna go. All right, but I don't even have to have that second point. The more points you have, the better, but do you see this dot? How am I gonna get closer and closer to the asymptotes but never touch them? It'll go like this. Closer and closer that way. and then it'll get closer and closer that way. All right, so if you understand asymptotic behavior, your life will be so much better. So take a second and make this set of asymptotes like that and like that. Just copy the board. It'll just take you a second. This is the last thing we're going to do to talk about the hard graphs. I know you can all find the asymptotes. We've practiced the verticals and the horizontals enough. You probably got those. So you'll be able to do this on the test. I hope you can stick a number in and figure out a point. Now I'm going to show you, just to make sure you could actually do this, if this is at 7 and this is at 1, then this graph would have been y equals 1 over x, except it moved 7 to the right and up 1. Do you get that so far? Does that make sense to you? That was a 1 over x graph that got moved 7 to the right and up 1. You with me on that? Okay. Then, here's the question. Can you find me a point to the right of the vertical asymptote and a point to the left of the vertical asymptote? And then can you do the asymptotic behavior I just showed you a second ago? So put the vertical asymptote on your chart. So Caitlin, what's going to cause the vertical asymptote?
What was that, sorry?
What's going to cause the vertical asymptote? Like, or can you tell me just what is the vertical asymptote on this one?
The vertical asymptote is x equals 7.
Perfect. So I'm going to put a 7 right here, and I'm going to say that that's the vertical asymptote. Then go on either side of that and get a point. Luke, what's a number on either side of the vertical asymptote? Not the whole point, just the next number.
6, 8.
Yeah. If you haven't already, find out what you get when you put in 6 and 8. Ian Dalio, can you tell me what happens when you when you stick in the 6?
You get a -1.
All right. Can anybody verify 6, -1? Then maybe you don't get -1. So I'm going to put a 6 right here. And I know you're like, what's going on? 1 divided by -1 is -1. Here's what you missed. Plus the 1 at the end. So -1 plus 1. How about 0? Who had 6 comma 0? Ah, there we go. So I'm going to go over 6 and up 0, and there's a dot right there. Andrew, what's the other one? 8 comma what?
2.
Double checking you because you seem so not confident.
Well,
Okay. So it's 2. You are right, it's 2. So then I'm going to go over 8 and up 2, and there's a dot right there. Now, do you know how to do asymptotic behavior? Cool. So then you should know it goes closer and closer, never touches, closer, closer, never touches. Same here, same here. There we go. All right. Would there be anything more complicated than that on the test? Yes, because we sometimes put in a hole. Let me show you how that would look. So our same little equation that we had an x minus 7 and the plus 1. So let me just show you what it would look like. Still has the x minus 7. Still has the plus 1 over here. But it has a x minus 2 and an x minus 2. I know, I just changed the problem on you, but that's more realistic to what the test is like, because they'll probably have a hole. So, adjust your graph now to reflect what I just did. So, given that I have told you that the graphs are what you're going to have the most trouble with, do you get that today and tomorrow it'd be really smart to work on the hard graphing problems? If all you want is a C, then learn all the other stuff besides the graphs, because they're pretty easy. I'm going to give you a quiz on that today. You're probably going to get 7 out of 8 or better. But if you really want an A on this next test, because you like A's, get good into graphs. And that's what your homework is for tonight. For tonight, all we're doing is, last night it was a bunch of graphs. If you didn't catch that, it's a bunch of graphs. And I had you skip a bunch. Now I'm going to have you go back and unskip those. And that's your only homework, is to take last night's worksheet, finish it if you didn't already, and then take all the ones you skipped and do those. That's your homework. Okay? So it really only adds like 5, 6 graphing problems. But take them really seriously, because I'm warning you, the graphs is what I had to mark wrong a ton. So get good at graphs. Look at your keys. Tomorrow we'll have a review worksheet. It'll have graphs on it too. All right. Okay. That little quiz you just did to review, and then this little intense workout on the making the graph where we had the hole just added at the end there, right there. This guy, the hole will be at 2. So I figure out where 2 would be, which would be about there. And then I punch a hole in my graph. I go get an eraser and put a hole right there. And then to make it extra stand out, I'll make it red. There. Do the holes at the end. All right. So, one last time, your homework is last night's homework, except unskip the ones you skipped and do them. Now, there's one point you're going to get to is number 10. Number 10 doesn't have a graph, but what you can do is make a copy. I know you may not use this all the time, but in Notability, you can just circle lasso something and you make a copy of it. Copy one of the blank graph papers and drag it over for number 10. So you'll have graph paper to do number 10. And then you'll look at the key. And the key will say, you don't have to graph number 10. But given you only have a few left, graph number 10 anyway. Because I know you'll be like, but I'm not sure how it looks. Make points. That's the point of an XY chart, is you can make points. So you may have to compare with the kid next to you tomorrow to see if your graph and their graph look the same for number 10. Because there isn't a key for it. But make a copy of the graph paper for yourself off a blank one next to it. All right. And now, here comes the long-awaited little quiz. This is supposed to be the easy ones. Don't get overconfident. If this is easy for you, then that means you still have to know a hard graphing.